Welcome back to the latest episode of the CJ Tour, and I truly do mean the latest one at this point because, in case you haven't heard it, I decided to relocate the podcast / myself to LA. So it's the first podcast with a new setup here. Hopefully it sounds just as good as normal, if not a little bit better. But to commemorate this experience of the new podcast in LA / to celebrate it, I have, of course, somebody who lives in Detroit and is on 3 hours later time zone, but nonetheless is here able to greet me as well. Andrew Pitlock joining. Andrew, how's it going?
I'm doing great, man. I'm excited to be on here. This is my second appearance now on the CGA Tour, and look forward to diving into some different topics on this one.
Yeah. So I know when I had you on before,
our last one was in person, which was a nice
yeah.
day.
I think that was the last podcast that I ever did in Detroit in person. And that podcast was the second to last day that I was actually in that practice facility ever. Or at least
that was like the second to last day all of us were.
Yeah.
Because I remember specifically working it was a Saturday night game at Little Caesars Arena when the Utah Jazz came to town, and the news broke, and ever since, man, we I went 14 straight months working from home. It was crazy.
Yeah, same here. I flew. I think we did the podcast on a Monday, and the next day I left work to go on vacation / to go see my grandfather for his 90th birthday party. And that was on the Tuesday, March 10th. And then, of course, March 11th, I got off a plane in Hawaii, ready to see my grandpa and everything like that. And I've got like a bunch of missed texts and calls. A bunch is relative to people. So I had like 3, which is a lot for me. Of course, it's not that many to other people, of course, after a 7-hour plane flight. But nonetheless, the NBA world melted down into what we have now today that we're still dealing with COVID and eventually back to full capacity arenas, it looks like in many areas. But either way, it's kind of the bookends. We got the one chapter, kind of going on in Detroit with you, and then, come back next podcast with Andrew. It's basically when COVID's ending, I'll say. I mean, it's still, granted, everyone's got to be safe, all type of stuff. Go get vaccinated. Always be supporting that. But with all that said, one of the hobbies or / things that I learned about that you're really into during COVID that you've been into for a long time is sports card reselling. So I want to have you on the podcast here.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit more about, kind of like a sports card reseller's 101, right? Like, 1, how'd you get into it? And 2, kind of explain like what you're doing now as well.
Sure. Yeah. So I appreciate that introduction.
Of course.
And very, very kind. With that said, so I've been collecting sports cards for well over a decade and a half now. Ever since I was a kid, every birthday, any excuse for my parents to give me a gift, that's exactly what I was asking for. And thankfully, I was very interested in basketball. Any other sports card market at this point in time. Football, given it a little bit of competition on that front. But I've been collecting sports cards since I was, 8 or 9 years old. And the game has completely done a full 180. When I was first getting into it, I was sifting through packs, which are cards that have, like a slice of jersey inside them, like a game-worn piece of jersey or a game-worn bat or some other sort of, cool commemorative memorabilia, or of course, autographed cards. And outside of that, there wasn't really too much else that I was looking for. Obviously, the big-name rookie cards, but as a kid, those weren't, I don't know, weren't too enticing to me. But luckily, as a kid, I also kind of had this obsession with keeping my cards in the best condition possible. I knew that more or less, you get Pokemon cards and Yu-Gi-Oh cards to play the game. You get basketball cards and sports cards to preserve them. You are only buying them to protect them. And I did